Now I want to ask you, how efficient is your small property? What I mean by that is, what percentage of your land are you actually giving to the whitetails? And I think a lot of you out there will say, well, I'm giving it all. You know, I'm improving this switchgrass over here, I'm putting food plots in, I'm putting water holes in, creating hinge cuttings, timber cuttings, whatever it is. What I look at, not how much habitat improvements and what level has been made, how many improvements you've made on your land, how many acres you've made, but how many acres can you give to the whitetail herd on your land that's contiguous, all put together, where you're giving the highest percentage that you can give to deer, where your sight, your sound, your scent never enters. And when I say never, I mean, you know, a month before the season starts and all season long. Now, of course, you have to shoot deer. That's the whole fun of it. And manage deer, reduce the population, whatever you might. So deer will run into bedding areas. You have to retrieve them. I encourage you to go in after dark with the machine running. That's what I always do. Not always, but most of the time do, so that I'm non-invasive. But it all boils back to, what percentage of your land can you give to the deer herd that is a location and an area that fits together, that they don't see you, hear you, or smell you. I find that on most properties, if people are honest, meaning that the deer can smell them from 150 yards away, they can hear them sometimes for 200 yards away, and sometimes they can see them when they're walking through the hardwoods, that out of a 40-acre parcel, there is 0 acres that you could say, these acres are all deer all the time, because the deer can see you, hear you, or smell you within those acres. When I look at parcels, no matter what the size, I want to maximize the size of acreage in giving that to deer. You have to be able to give the deer at least 50% of your parcel. It's a lot harder on a small parcel because you have to use a certain amount of acreage to actually access the property. So I'm going to go through some examples here and just show how we do that to make sure that you're giving deer the most acreage you can. And what's incredible about this, and it goes back again, I do have higher expectations for my clients, because they don't realize what it's like to have just 15, 20, 30 acres, 40 acres, depending on the size of the parcel, where it's all deer all the time. And I want you to think about some of the metro parks or some of the suburban areas that might be located in the areas you're at, to where there is an incredible deer herd on that 10-acre, 20-acre chunk. There are new food plots, no water holes, no improvements, no mock scrapes, no travel corridors, no bedding areas. There's just the fact that deer can live there every day during the daylight hours and not see you, hear you, or smell you. Now, in a subdivision setting, they're always going to hear you. And that's why in some of the urban settings, suburban settings, the deer are very easy to hunt, very easy to shoot. The problem is getting permission to hunt in those locations. That's the hard part. But look at the little area like this. This area right here, and we go into the neighbors here where my client had permission to hunt, but just this portion right here is about 12 to 14 acres, just right here. You add this right here and we bump that up to where it's probably about 15 acres altogether that he has to hunt, but he can't complete any habitat improvements here. Before I came to his property, there's open hardwoods here. He could walk through here, the deer could see him. They're bumping out the back end. This is similar hunting that I had from 1987 to 1997 in the Thumb area of Michigan. In fact, this was in Michigan, the Wausau area, so not that far away. But the deer could see you coming, they're out the backside. There's a little swale here where deer could hide a little bit. There's a pond. In this location, there's another thick swale. Deer could hide there a little bit. But other than that, there's nothing. So we had a fragmented acre or two, half acre, and really no cover here, no cover on the neighbors, and a fence row. So really that wasn't putting it all together. You know, that property that he can hunt, that he can use, there's really nothing to make sure that that deer can hold on there and not be spooked by people. This little, don't be confused with this. This is this right here, just taken out. It was another option for him if he wanted to give the farmer a few more acres to work with, but even then it's still surrounded in switchgrass, which is yellow. So complete some timber cuttings in the woods, chopping down some large, irregularly shaped, multi-trunked, subordinate trees that are low timber value, reducing canopy by 20 to 30%, putting that log and top on the ground, and now you're taking this from a 0 out of 10 or a 1 out of 10 from bedding to a 5 or 6. The goal is not ultimately to be a 10 out of 10, but a 5 or 6 is going to hold deer. He's screening this with parallel cuttings because we don't want the deer going back and forth. We want him to be able to walk on the outside of this, and we're completing this with perpendicular cuttings to the woods, so the deer can go in and out, but it's a heavy hinge cut line where the deer, once they're on the backside, they're completely safe. Switchgrass all the way around, switchgrass all the way around this little swale. So the deer, and this is a very thick fence row, so the deer that are contained in here anywhere cannot see him, smell him, or hear him coming in to hunt the stand locations that are located around this area. These areas would be more morning stands because he's coming in the backside of cover. This with an opening and a mock scrape. Mock scrape is an area where he can come into the evening waiting for deer to come out of here, and he can get there because he can come in behind the fence row in the switchgrass. Same with here. Morning stand, because if he tries to get in there in the morning, he's going to bump deer out of this little area. This is just micromanagement hunting. This is what I did back in the 80s to the 90s in these little, where I had 5 acres to hunt, a fence row, and I didn't have a lot to hunt. In the Thumb area, Michigan, where it's all flat. Same with here. It's a great morning stand. You could even get in there in the evening possibly, but coming in behind the switchgrass. Evening stand right here because you might bump deer out of this big field or wait for the field to clear from deer and then head into the tree stand. And then he can sit and watch his food plot while he's in the switchgrass in a pop-up redneck ghillie blind, something low profile, redneck blind where he's down in the grass is above the blind. That switchgrass in this area in lower Michigan will grow to 7 to 8 feet tall, be very thick. He's planting at 8 to 10 pounds an acre because he's not bedding deer within him. Deer don't like to bed in switchgrass typically anyways, but pure screening. He's screening the outside, he's screening his access. This is a ½ mile long right here. So a lot of access, screening, but bottom line, he's getting the most out of this small chunk right here. And in the end, he's going to get 14, 13 acres, whatever it is, that he can actually include as all deer all the time, because a mature buck can go from here to here, does, fawns, they can go back and forth in here, and they don't have to be spooked by people. And the power of just 12, 13, 14, 15 acres is incredible when deer do not know that you're hunting them and you give them food plots, habitat improvements, cuttings, hardwood regeneration. When you try to meet their needs in a daylight basis, then you can do this even on a small parcel. So you're trying to maximize the efficiency. That's how you do it. You create this core area, you're hunting the outside edges, you're hunting funnels, you're hunting inside corners. This is a ditch crossing right here that's prolific, and he's making sure that that travel corridor wraps around exactly to set up stand locations, and it works. You're trying to maximize. Without that, it's fragmented. He doesn't have a chance. This way, he'll hold mature bucks, and you can hold multiple mature bucks on a small parcel during the rut or during the heart of the season, because if their choice is to expose themselves on the outside to hunting pressure, then to me the choice is obvious. They're going to actually withstand the proximity of each other during the heart of the season on a small parcel. That's not big parcel science, where you see a 3-mile home range for bucks. That's just experience based on working on small parcels. They'll tolerate the proximity of each other, and that works. We'll just flip through here. This is a 100-acre parcel, and I might be off on the exact, but 100-acre parcel. This was something where the family was entering through the middle, stands to the outside, pushing the deer to the outside of the parcel, waiting for him to come back on. It was a outside-in parcel, meaning they didn't have much daylight movement. Now we'll use this great access that they have already a road in place. Big ridge system here where they're coming in behind the ridge, extremely thick in here. They can also come around, come off the road here, come into this area here. They can come off the road on this side. We're turning this into switchgrass instead of a food plot. That food plot was designed, it was going to push deer on and off the parcel. We're containing the deer in this area. Now, if that's 100 acres right there, we're getting about 70 acres. They have a house in land right in here, pond. So, there's an area that's chunked out of here, but we're getting about 70 acres out of 100. So that parcel is running at a level of 70% efficiency, meaning that they can avoid, these are all morning stands back here, more evening stands back here, morning stands back in the cover, morning stands back here as they're waiting for deer to come off, evening stands closer to the food source. So you create that stand assemblage, and then you also create an actual true core sanctuary area. Again, everyone says they have a sanctuary, but if the deer can hear you, see, or smell you, it's not a sanctuary. This, they can slip in different ways from different locations, from the house, going back to the road. They have great access, and that helps them develop a high percentage of core land based on their overall acres. Very efficient parcel, and they actually have a true core area now, and I can't wait to hear from them because they have some big bucks in this area, and that's a real nice parcel. This area right here is a 40 and a 20. And again, you can see the road that went through the middle right here. And that road went all the way down to the bottom. And again, pushing deer off, waiting for them to come back on. Instead, they have great access on the road here. They can also come off a road here and then come off a road from the bottom coming up. So really good access. And what all those access points mean is they can develop this core area in here that relates to the core area down here. Bedding area improvements, edge habitat improvements next to the swamp, bedding area on the outside. They can get around it all, and then they can wait for those deer to come back in the morning. They can hunt morning stand locations that are away from food or big food. They can hunt evening close to food. And you create ultimately that core area, even though it's irregularly shaped, which is a very efficient parcel. In this area, that core probably represents 65% of their land. So in this case, probably 40 acres, 38 acres, whatever it is, it's over 50%. And that's the only way that you're going to get bucks to hold and focus on your land during the daylight when you give them those acres. And really, I want you to think about this. Mature buck might have a home range of 3 miles at night. That's scientifically proven. But what science doesn't prove is how little he can focus on areas during the daytime when there are a lot of hunters around and they're small fragmented parcels. Again, most of the science applies to large public land holdings where they can put a collar on a deer and track them. Large private land holdings. That doesn't apply to small parcels, because on a small parcel, you're looking at managing the 200 to 300 yards that a mature buck will travel during the daylight on a daily basis the majority of the season. So when you give them those acres, when you give them a corner, inside area, then that's why you can fit multiple mature bucks on a small parcel. And you do it by making sure that you have that true core area on that parcel. This is an interesting parcel. It's a long angle. This actually gets so wet that deer can't even move back out here. Again, they're going from a cabin over here and they're going out to stand locations in the middle of the woods off to the edge. They're waiting for deer to come back this way onto their land. In fact, this is one of the biggest movements on this Michigan parcel right here, as they're going on and off this funnel. And it's because they're pushing them out here into an area that's not hunted. And then when they do hunt for gun season over here, they're pushing deer back and forth. As is right now, when they go out and go this way and wait for deer to come back, they're exposing mature bucks on the outsides to excessive hunting pressure. For that, it's reducing the overall age structure of bucks on the land in the neighborhood, where they can completely flip that around. And they do it by, again, creating that core area. They do it by accessing to travel corridors, create bedding areas. They access along the water back here in the morning, let their scent blow back to non-deer areas in wet areas where deer can't be. Same with here. They're going all the way around and coming in this way. They're creating more bedding here instead of food plot. They were putting this all into food plot. We're getting rid of that. They're putting all their food to one side, so it creates that depth of cover all the way back. And then they're hunting that outside depth back in the timber for morning bucks as they're going back into those areas to bed. Those bucks don't want to feed here and then travel out here every single day. The does certainly don't either. They want to bed, those does want to bed right in here as close as they can, but you have to give that to them. Once you establish those bedding areas for does, then it starts to establish that layering effect where you have depth, where you can actually have, I would suspect there'd be some great mature buck bedding right back in here, maybe over into here. You're only hunting those areas in the morning during the rut, waiting for the bucks to come back to you. Really high percentage sit. You go back to one of these stands, big bedding area in between, that should be almost a 50-50 hunt on a cool autumn day, end of October, really good morning where there's been a temp drop. You're hunting the temperatures, you're waiting for the right time to use that stand. If you go there and during a warm time and you blow out those deer, they're not going to be there for 2 or 3 weeks. But if you go in there and wait, end of October, big cold front during mid-October, October lull, and you're hunting towards the food sources at night because the feed bag's on for those deer, you can create a stand assemblage even on this small parcel. This area right here is about 80. I would estimate this is 55, and I would estimate that there's at least 30 to 35, maybe 40 acres of usable deer space out of 55, 60 that's all deer all the time. And when you put those features together and create that core area where the deer can't see you, hear you, or smell you, it's amazing what can be accomplished with a 10-acre neighborhood set aside with a couple monster bucks that live on the fall with no habitat improvements. Imagine if you flip that to 15 acres, 35 acres, 60 acres, 70 acres out of 100, that's all deer all the time. Give them that neighborhood park effect, and you're adding water holes, mock scrapes, food sources, travel corridors, bedding areas, timber stand improvement, switchgrass. It is amazing what you can accomplish on small parcels by creating a core area and not only hunting and accessing it at the right time, but hunting it for the right weather. You can accomplish great things. That's why I have a lot higher expectations for my clients typically than they have, because they just have no idea what they can experience on their land. And that's why I try to bring it to you as often as possible, because this stuff is exciting. It works. I've seen it hundreds of times over. I enjoy it living on my own land. And I want you to experience it this season, because if you do this with all these clients, I'm turning it around. I'm helping them turn it around. They're doing all the work, of course. Sometimes Ross goes out, but they're doing it in one season. And you can turn it around this season too. And I can't wait to hear about it.